we get to the next session for the day, which is on the role of financial institutions in disrupting illicit wildlife trade. And this will be presented by Mr. Ajay Panandikar, the Director for Integrated Intelligence and Investigations and Financial Crime Complaints for Standard Chartered Bank. So, to quickly introduce Mr. Ajay, he's the sorry, he's currently the Director for Group Integrated Intelligence and Investigations in the FCC unit. He manages complex financial crime investigations, investigative projects, and thematic reviews for Standard Chartered Bank. Typically, these projects pertain to various FCC verticals like anti-money laundering, sanctions, anti-bribery and corruption, illicit wildlife tracking, modern slavery, and human trafficking. Ajay has 14 years of experience in FCC and 18 years of banking experience. Ajay is a computer science engineer and an MBA in banking management by qualification. Ajay holds CAMS and CFE certification, which he attained during his professional journey. While Ajay is not fighting financial crime, he enjoys reading, playing cricket, and with his son, and playing badminton. All right, Mr. Ajay. Uh, all right, Mr. Ajay. I think there was some technical issues, I guess. Just a moment while we have Mr. Ajay back on stage. Just a moment, please. And I hope all of you are enjoying the presentations that we are having
Hi.
from the morning. Okay, Ajay is back here.
Hi. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Ajay, firstly, sorry that we had to make you wait for some time
Oh, that's fine.
because.
That's fine.
All right. So I leave the stage for you, Mr. Ajay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And sorry for the disruption. I was waiting since the last half an hour, but as Murphy's law would have it, I got disconnected at the last
Understand.
moment. So sorry for that. Let me just
Understand.
share my
No,
screen
no, no
and
problem.
let me know if you can see.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Is this visible, Anil?
1 second. Yes, it
Yeah.
is. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So let me start. And so my name is Ajay. I'm sure Anil would have introduced me. And I work in Standard Chartered Bank into the complex investigations unit within the bank. And the topic for today, my topic for today is on how we as FIs, financial institutes, could play a part in disrupting the illegal wildlife flow, right? So what I'm going to cover today is, just a brief intro. I won't spend more than a minute or two on this. What is IWT? And more importantly, where the meat for us lies is how do we as banks or non-banking financial institutes come in disrupting the IWT related flows. That's the second and the more chunkier bit of my session today. And then I'll touch upon briefly on the bank's initiatives in the fight against IWT if time permits. So I again, I'll try to just go very quickly through my presentation because I want questions. I think that would be much more interactive. So yeah, I'd be happy to take questions at the end of the session. I try to be as quick as possible in this session. So what is IWT? We all know what it is, right? So it's the illegal or unlawful harvest of or trade of live animals, plants, or their parts, products, etc. And more importantly, this particular criminal offense a lot of times overlaps with other crimes such as human trafficking, drug trafficking, terrorist financing. You've seen a lot of times when both of these or multiple criminal types converge, and we'll look at it a bit more in detail in the future. So how does it impact society? Like in the last 10 to 15 years, Tanzania has lost 60% of its elephant population. And it's, I mean, it's just numbers here, but if you go to these places, you would know what I mean, right? In the last, since 1970 onwards, in the last 40 50 years, the world's rhino population has decreased by 90%, which is a huge number. I mean, to think of it, if we just let things be as they are now, probably our next generation would not even see what a rhino is, which is grave, right? And currently, the most trafficked mammal is the pangolin. The pangolin scales are used as ornaments. The pangolin meat is used for consumption. 2.7 million of pangolins are harvested annually from forests in Central Africa. So these are just the numbers, which would lead us nicely into our next slide, which is again what I was talking about in my previous slide, which is how do these various crimes converge. So if you see, IWT typically would have correlation or meeting points with a lot of various crimes. So be it drug trafficking, human trafficking, corrupt officials, use of money laundering to to put the illicitly acquired money into banking system, evasion of tax, financing terrorism. It's basically the threat conversion point where trafficking and the organized crime and corruption meets. This is the business model, how typically the flow of goods happen. If you see on the left of your screen in the diagram, we have got the Central African continent, which is a rich source of some of the uh, some of the more in-demand IWT products, and typically these would be consumed. The consumer market lies in Southeast Asia or Central Asia. Yeah, and what are the various actors which operate in at each stage? So if we had to look at the three stages, one is the source stage, wherein the animals, or wherein the mammals would be present. So we have the poachers, the hunters, the people on the ground who would actually do the poaching. They would actually kill the animals, actually make the animals unconscious, to remove the horns, etc., etc. Then the middlemen, those who interact between these poachers and the actual traders, or the uh, you know couriers, etc. And then the corrupt officials, be it the forest officials, or anyone who would operate in these jurisdictions. Now, the next stage is the transit countries, which can be local or international. So these would be your couriers, officials, customs officers, uh, freight business entities. And at the destination countries where the consumption markets is, it would typically be our corrupt officials again, and the factories, retailers, buyers. This would be the typical actors. And it's very important for us as financial institutes in our role to stop this, or to try to stop this, to recognize the various actors, because that's how we would then know what red flags to look at in each country, or in each of these markets, right? So this is a very high profit margin business, right? So if you look at the markup, something which is sold by the poachers at X amount would typically be premiumed at 1,000 times X in the consumption markets. So this is the type of premium or markups which are generated. Yeah, so let's look at what's the role of us financial institutes in disrupting these flows. So we as financial institutes should have priorities for action, right? So these are the three priorities which we should look at. One is to better understand the financial flow. So the reason I showed the flow of goods was for us to realize that the flow of funds would typically be in the opposite direction, right? So we should understand how the finances would flow, how the money would flow, and we need to escalate IWT as a key agenda item for the bank. So it has to be one of our priorities. We need to recognize that this is a crime which exists, and we have a big part in trying to fight this crime. And especially because of the geographies that we are in, right? I would assume most of the audience would be in the Middle East. We would be kind of the middleman, kind of the transit hubs for a lot of these shipments, right? And we need to create a broad transnational coalition of partners. A lot of us would have heard about PPP, public-private partnerships, or financial intelligence sharing protocols, FISPs. So these are some of the mediums through which we could share information and try a bit, to see if how can make things a bit better. This is how intelligence flows. So if you look at the bright green box at the top right of your screen, we have the law enforcement agencies who serve production orders to the financial institutes, based on which the financial institutes would then do its own bit of investigation, see try to understand if there's anything suspicious of or if there's anything of concern for that particular subject. If so, it would then file STRs to the FIUs. The FIUs, if required, would then disseminate this information to the public prosecutor's office. And then there are the restrictions which lie, right? As a financial institute operating in one jurisdiction, we're not allowed to share it with the concerns that we have for a particular client with other jurisdictions. There are a lot of complicated data sharing issues which lie. So yeah, I mean, although we can share information within the country and to an extent to some of the other countries, but there are a lot of restrictions along the way. So how do we follow the money? And again, I think it's very important to know this in terms of IWT, but this again can would be common for any of the complex cases that we do in our team. So what's the first step? The first step is a trigger, right? What can a trigger be? A trigger can typically be receiving information through production orders or through public engagements. We have got a lot of partners who work on the ground. So by that I mean companies like UNODC, or companies like EIA, who work on the ground. They've got a lot of intelligence from their operators on the ground, which they then pass on to banks like us. Which would then lead to an internal trigger. Okay. Next is intelligence gathering. What we would do is check for these names, check for the subjects which have been sent to us, see if we have any exposure. By that I mean if we have any of them as clients in any of our jurisdictions, or by virtue of Standard Chartered being one of the biggest correspondent banking service provider, if we are exposed to correspondent banking transactions, look at if there is any touch point with the bank. Once we do that, and if we find that there's a client, then there's a lot more for us to do, right? We have to look at the due diligence papers. We have to look at the transaction information if we have any, and then see if unfortunately we have been subject to using our bank products for facilitation of their crime. If so, and if we think that there's something which is worth reporting, then we would be taking those further actions. You can fulfill our local regulating obligations. We can work on post reporting actions, like it can be anything. It can be exiting the client if required, or putting in internal controls. Coming up with a thematic review, training, awareness for the other staff on how to deal with such cases. So typically, this is how we follow the money. Again, as I said, not restricted to IWT, but I think it's a very good way in which we could follow the money. Yeah. So we, as a significant correspondent banking hub, what are the exposures that we would have? I again touched on this in my previous slide. We could either have a direct client relationship with the subject. So the particular subject which has been investigated might be a client of ours, or it could be indirect relationship. By that I mean a transaction counterparty. So a client of ours might have transacted with the subject which is under investigation or under allegation. And third is we might not have any relationship directly or indirectly, but we could be exposed to this particular subject and in turn to the client through our correspondent banking channels. We also have trade counterparty, but I think that's a separate session altogether, so I won't really touch on that. And if we have a direct client relationship, that's when the wealth of information with the bank or any financial institute lies, right? So we have a lot of information. You got, if it's an individual, you got the CD details, the static details. If it's a company, we've got what is the where is the company incorporated, what's the address, who are the people involved, linked people, what's the activity, who controls the company, and then we got the transactional details. So which banks does it bank with, what are the kind of transactions, what are the kind of counterparties that this particular subject deals with, what if there have been ATM withdrawals, cash withdrawals, what are the locations of those, and so on. So there's a wealth of information that the bank has, which we can use for our own analysis, and then if we think that there's something of concern, then share with the FIs for their collation and analysis. Yeah, if we only have a correspondent banking relationship, if we do not have any client relationship, then this is the information we should have. Typically, that would be restricted to the transactions with us. And yeah, what are the red flags? So I've just come up with some of the red flags as an individual. So I'll again go through this very quickly in the interest of time, and I've shared all of these slides with Anil, so he can share it, or you guys can get in touch with me directly. So as an individual, if it's an actor or a transporter, storage provider, packer, then it may include wealthy businessmen, it may include peps as well. So if it's a diplomatic or an embassy staff with contacts in both source and destination country, these are typically the ones who would be involved. Or if we know there's someone from the destination country, the consumption country, residing in one of the source countries, and operating a small time business, supermarket, restaurant, or any other smaller infrastructure company, these can be red flags. Again, these are just red flags, these things which indicate, and we might need to look at further. Some of the corporate client red flags would be businesses who are trading in these goods. So if they're licensed traders in some of the let's say some of the goods, some of the animal products, then they might commingle licit and illicit trade. Freight forwarders, agents who are known to operate in the transit locations, they are big red flags. Front businesses, we might see some companies open offices in these jurisdictions only for the sake of this particular activity, or shell companies might provide a fake cover for the trade. And yeah, adverse media, open source uh, intelligence also is a big it provides a big lead when you are looking at these clients. Transactions, okay, again, red flags related transactions, usage of ATM in specifically in areas which are known for this. Adverse media identified and transaction counterparties, use of systems such as Hawala, payment made via remittance channels, use of e-commerce platforms, or if you had to look at some countries wherein the mobile banking is very prevalent, like Kenya, for example, M-Pesa is a very popular means of payment. So use of this to in far-flung, or in far-flung location is another red flag. So yeah, that I know. I mean, I could have spoken a bit more about this, but we can go on and on this. I'd like to now touch a bit upon the bank's initiative in the fight against IWT. So what we do is uh, we partner with our respondent banks and clients who are looking to improve their controls, and we share our experience with them. So how do we do this? We hold uh, uh, periodic correspondent banking academies. We help them to build robust controls. So what we do is we de-risk through education. So if you have uh, a, a, a a bank in, let's say, Tanzania, okay, a local bank in Tanzania with not such strong controls, what we would do is, instead of de-risking them, like closing a relationship with them, we would educate them and try to bring them up to our level, so that we are now comfortable that their controls are, if not the same, but comparable, or in line with our risk appetite. So we do that to promote financial inclusion, especially in the markets that we operate in, and especially in the region that we're operating in. Another initiative is the United for Wildlife Task Force. So we Standard Chartered played a leading role in creation of this particular task force. It's a coalition of 26 financial institutes, NGOs, technical experts working together. It was convened by Prince William, His Highness Prince William, through United for Wildlife, and it has three primary objectives. And this is to raise the profile of the trade among financial institutes. As I said previously, uh, we need to recognize that this is a serious crime indeed, and source and share tactical, strategic information or intelligence on how this trade is financed. And last but not the least, build this crime into financial institutes' existing compliance and financial crime systems. I think that's really important. So yeah, there's a bit about the task force. The member banks who are a part of this task force. And yeah, thank you. I hope our children live to look at this particular species in person. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Ajay, for the presentation. It definitely answered a lot of questions which I personally had in mind. As somebody who is consistently volunteering for man-animal conflicts and wildlife conservation, I could definitely correlate to the presentation and understand the financial aspect of it. Thank you so much at a personal level as well.